footsteps are cool at dawn. Olive leaves still hold the night. Smoke is curling slow and thin. Names I whisper to the light. Sing, oh, sing to the stones and sky. Let the old words rise. Let the old words rise.
So folks, welcome back to another video. Today we are heading into part 4 of SullaThe. So the Mithridatic War is starting, and apparently the Pontus Empire has not learned about not using stuff like elephants and, in this case, chariots. I rarely have seen a fight actually in the history where I have seen, like, in these history videos where that kind of shock troops actually works. Like, it seems like everyone has kind of just figured out the weakness, but they keep using them. So yeah, pretty stupid. But we are heading into the Mithridatic War. So let's go.
News of the disaster the King Mithridates had suffered at Chaeronea came down on Asia Minor like a ton of bricks, and cities bound inexorably to Mithridates VI by blood, such as Ephesus, Pergamon, and a slew of others, were suddenly causing the King of Pontus problems. He dealt with such rumblings with merciless efficiency. For example, when the Tetrarch leadership of Galatia seemed as though its loyalty was wavering, Mithridates invited them to a banquet and had them all massacred. Although the Pontic monarch was busy dealing with the unrest in Asia, a formidable skill at organization allowed him to send a general known as Dorilaeus at the head of another army into Greece. Both Appian and Plutarch give us a total manpower of 80,000 for this new invasion force.
Damn.
Given their previous spurious estimate of 120,000 for Archelaus' army, however, it is probably more reasonable to say that Dorilaeus sailed into Chalcis with at most another 40,000. After his retreat from the pitched defeat on the plains near Chaeronea, Archelaus had reverted to war on a strategic scale. Using his vast superiority at sea, the general privateered his way up and down the Aegean and Adriatic seas, picking off Roman supply convoys, launching amphibious raids on enemy coastal bases, and even attacking the transports of Marian consul Lucius Valerius Flaccus as they attempted to cross from Italy. Sulla, meanwhile, was facing the prospect of a three-sided conflict at his expense. Replacement legions led by Flaccus, a subordinate of Cinna, and representative of Sulla's worst rivals in Rome, had landed in Greece and were approaching from the north, while Archelaus and his
Sulla has still rivals in Rome after he conquered it. Damn.
newly reinforced army sat happily in Chalcis. Sulla began marching north into Thessaly, where he would deal with Cinna's bandit general, but halted at Melitea upon receiving word that the Pontics were on the march. With a reinforced army at their back, Dorilaeus and some of the other commanders, as of yet unaccustomed to the quality of the Roman legions, pressed for another pitched battle, arguing that the paltry Roman force had no hope of opposing theirs. Archelaus urged caution, but when Dorilaeus implied that the defeat at Chaeronea could only have been treachery to Mithridates, Archelaus quickly fell in line. The Pontic army's maneuvering back into Boeotia caught the attention of Sulla, who called off his march against Flaccus without hesitation in favor of doubling back on Archelaus. If the barbarians wanted another thrashing, they were welcome to have one. An initial skirmish near Tilphosium went in Sulla's favor, leading Dorilaeus to recant his aggression and argue in favor of Archelaus. However, when the cavalry-heavy Pontic army came to a brilliant plain near Orchomenus, it was Archelaus who, heartened by the favorable terrain, decided on a pitched battle. They encamped in a strong position and waited until Sulla approached and did the same, Another clash was inevitable. The Sullan army,
Don't use the chariots this time.
victorious at Kairanea the previous year, was arrayed in 3 lines of battle, each one interrupted by gaps which enemy charging units could be funneled through. Now, however, the proconsul acted with more subtlety. His forward ranks, the Antesignati, began drawing up with a denser frontage than those behind, but with more space between them and the lines to their rear, the Postsignati. Sulla had stakes driven into the ground in this extra space as a further obstacle. Cleverly utilizing the average legionary status as a half-engineer and builder, Sulla immediately set about nullifying Archelaus' cavalry advantage by digging 10-foot wide trenches along each wing. If completed, these makeshift barricades would render vast areas of the plain virtually inaccessible to the deadly Pontic cavalry.
Yo, why is the Mithridatic forces just standing there allowing this to happen? Like, could it just have attacked? Like, dude, don't let them prepare like this.
By protecting the flanks of Sulla's infantry-dependent army. Seeing the inherent advantage of open terrain disappearing right before his eyes at the hands of the Republican shovel, Archelaus hastily sent out his cavalry to attack the unprepared Romans in their thousands. They concentrated primarily on the trench diggers working to fortify the Roman wings, but their rapid mounted onrush panicked Sulla's half-formed soldiers to the brink of rout. All of a sudden, morale was shaky, and the general almost lost control. True to form, Sulla rose to the occasion and displayed the prodigious charisma for which he became famous. As the beleaguered infantry labor units in front began reaching a breaking point, especially on the left, their brilliant commander rose to aid them. Arriving on the scene, Sulla leapt from his horse and began pushing his way to the very forefront, with Rome's vaunted Aquila standard in hand. By that point, some of his men were attempting to flee towards the camp, and it was to them he bellowed forth, "For me, Romans, an honorable death here, but for you, when men ask you where you betrayed your commander, remember to tell them at Orchomenus." Sulla's personal presence and his words of accursed shame rallied the routing units to renewed bravery. Furthermore, 2 unengaged cohorts from the right flank came to reinforce their general, together with most of Sulla's officers, who, fearing for their commander's safety, left their own units to join the fight. With fresh and steadied soldiers alike at his back, Sulla led a foot charge and managed to rout the Pontic cavalry. Perhaps as a reward for this speedy recovery, or simply to get them fueled for the rigors of further battle, Sulla used an intermission in the fighting to feed his legions breakfast. Gratefully, the men keenly began preparing entrenchments for a second time that day, only to be charged once more by cavalry and archers. The Pontic force fought hard, but the Romans fought harder. Counterattacking with gusto, the legionary cohorts closed with their enemy so quickly that the archers were unable to use their weapons effectively, while the Pontic cavalry simply could not match the Roman soldiery in a stat.
Why is the Pontic, more Pontic soldiers joining this fight? And why are they not joining the fight? Like, you can have the chance to take out the enemy cavalry. Like,
fight. Archelaus' assault quickly stalled and was turned back with many losses, including that of his son Diogenes, who, according to Plutarch, fought gallantly and fell gloriously. The first day ended without victory for either side. In the morning, Archelaus led his own army out into the space between the camps, with cavalry on the wings, scythed chariots in the vanguard, and the Macedonian-style phalanx behind.
oh my god.
Still further behind the locked spear formation were the surviving slave soldiers from Kairanea. Upon the Pontic general's order, his scythed chariots beelined straight for the first Roman line of Antesignati. As though dealing with such contraptions was standard routine for the veterans by this point, Sulla's vanguard units deftly maneuvered aside, allowing the speeding vehicles to barrel straight into the field of stakes behind them. Archelaus' chariot charge was finished before it even got a chance to truly begin. Roman javelineers swarmed around the beset Pontics, putting an end to them quickly. Sulla's soldiers advanced rank upon rank, prepared to meet the forthcoming enemy. On the other side of the field, whilst marching his slower infantry onward in reply, Archelaus dispatched the cavalry to keep the Roman attention distracted and their formation shaky, so that they would be easy prey for a phalanx marching in inexorable lockstep. The Roman general countered appropriately. Feeding his small quantity of cavalry through the established gaps, Sulla ordered his inferior quantity of horsemen to engage the galloping hordes of their enemy. They did so, suffering ferocious losses on both flanks, but succeeding in the objective of blocking Archelaus' charge before it hit the legions. As they were now static once more, the advancing legionaries were able to get a hold of and slaughter the Pontic cavalry, cutting through entire divisions as others fled in panic.
Wow.
Worse still, this disaster happened so quickly that the phalanx hadn't been able to properly organize, allowing the Romans free rein on the pike bearers. Fortunately for them, however, Archelaus was chastened by previous events and ensured there remained a good line of retreat. When it became scathingly obvious that his infantry were in the process of being slaughtered, the Pontic commander withdrew his entire army back. Several thousands of his infantry were dead, but that was pittance when compared to double the amount of cavalry, perhaps reaching up to 10,000, although less is probably more likely. The defeated remainder of Archelaus' army yet again took refuge in the camp, which was subsequently besieged and taken in a dogged fight. It was another brilliant Roman victory, but marred by the Romans' unwillingness to take prisoners and subsequent brutal massacre. Sulla had triumphed over a Pontic field army for the second time in as many years, but Archelaus managed to escape again. That particular detail didn't matter much, even serving to—
This guy needs to be removed from command. Like, he is so goddamn useless. Holy damn.
help the Triumphator's cause later. All the same, Rome's foreign spectre in the form of Mithridates was appropriately culled, with the Pontic king now considering peace talks with Sulla. For Sulla, it was almost time to deal with the domestic issue, but the proconsul could not afford to turn on Cinna and his lackeys quite yet. He had diplomatic matters to conclude in Greece, and a hostile Roman army, led by the general Flaccus, to deal with. To that end, he wintered in Thessaly and prepared his legionaries to do battle with their kin and countrymen. While Sulla had been campaigning against Mithridates, the political situation back home had been heating up. Aristocratic Romans opposed to Marius and Cinna had begun fleeing the capital in great numbers, arriving at Sulla's camp of war as to a harbour of refuge, so much that the proconsul and the de facto Optimates leader had a virtual senate of his own in the east. Each of these eminent figures came with terrible news from home, a tale of persecution and injustice at the hands of political enemies. Sulla's properties and those of his allies were being burned, their supporters and friends slain, and the Republic reduced to base tyranny. Sulla vowed it would stop, and that all the guilty would pay. Meanwhile, before taking on the rogue and traitor Sulla, Flaccus's Cinnan army advised winter march through Thrace, in hopes of gaining a few morale-raising victories against Pontus. Flaccus was a politically appointed general only, and so was relatively incompetent. Crucially, however, he utterly refused to take the counsel of his appointed military veteran, Gaius Flavius Fimbria, into account.
Oh no.
By the time Flaccus's hapless army reached the Hellespont, he was viewed with incredible hostility by both his army and his second-in-command. When Fimbria threatened to depart back to Rome, Flaccus had him replaced before leaving on some business. Predictably, Fimbria seized command of the army and had Flaccus's head lopped off when he returned, before throwing it into the sea. So it was that Fimbria became the principal Roman opponent Sulla would have to face here on out.
Ooh.
While Flaccus was occupied bungling his army and his life away, Sulla was conducting diplomacy with the twice-beaten general Archelaus at Delium. Mithridates, reflecting on the vast losses suffered by his armies in the field so far, had sent Archelaus to extend an olive branch, but he wasn't doing so purely to surrender. The king was all too aware of Sulla's political predicament, that the proconsul was essentially just a dangerous rogue with a powerful army, and he attempted to take advantage of that fact. In the name of an alliance and friendship with Sulla's father, Mithridates' commander offered his adversary what amounted to a blank check in money, ships, and mercenaries, so long as the Roman commander took those assets and went home, leaving Asia to its fate. With his customary wit, Sulla chimed back that it was truly unfortunate that it had taken 2 destroyed armies and tens of thousands of dead soldiers before Mithridates had remembered that they were friends. The implication of treason against his own republic appears to have angered Sulla a little, judging by his counteroffer. Advising the High Pontic general to look out for his own interests, and implying that Mithridates' crimes needn't be that of all Pontus, Sulla requested that Archelaus turn on his king and take the throne for himself. Then he could make amends with Rome as an ally of the Republic. Archelaus was predictably aghast at the notion, and made that known with a firm retort. Sulla then gave Archelaus a proper verbal thrashing in true Roman rhetorical style. If Archelaus, the slave who had fled like a frightened child after being roundly whipped in battle twice, would never betray his master, how dare he assume that Sulla, a Roman and a vaunted proconsul, would fall to such treacherous deeds? After this initial bit of obligatory chest-puffing showmanship, the proper negotiations began. Little evidence remains of the intricate details, but we know the eventual terms. Archelaus would hand over all his ships and get out of Greece. Mithridates was to vacate the unlawfully occupied areas of Asia Minor. Prisoners and deserters would be returned, and to put the cherry on top of the cake, 2,000 talents would be paid as a war indemnity. Some hard negotiation followed, during which Mithridates initially refused some of the terms, but was persuaded when Sulla threatened essentially to come over there and make him. During the entire process, Sulla took the subtle but incredibly intelligent step of keeping Archelaus close at hand, doting on the general and even caring for him when he became ill. This had the dual effect of generating unfavourable whispers of treason about Archelaus among the Pontic royal court, gradually weakening the link between Mithridates and his best general. On the other hand, he was still a powerful connection to the king, which Sulla could use.
Archelaus should honestly, I'm shocked that he hadn't been killed by Mithridates from what he did. Like, he's such a useless commander, like, damn.
After a reasonably tense personal meeting with Mithridates, Sulla concluded the Peace of Dardanus on the terms he had proposed. According to the incensed Roman soldiers, however, these gentle terms against such a dastardly enemy of the Republic as Mithridates could not be countenanced. Charismatic as always, Sulla turned the situation back on his angry men by arguing that fighting both the Roman legion led by his political opponent Fimbria, while continuing to fight Pontics, would have been an impossible task.
True.
Sulla was, of course, only looking out for his men. Now that Pontus had been well and truly humbled, Sulla bounded through Asia to deal with Fimbria. It was a simple task. After a few days of hard marching, the Sullan army caught up with their Roman enemy near the Lydian city of Thyatira. The grizzled Marian commander initially mocked his Roman rival, but upon seeing the hopelessness of the situation, he escaped to Pergamon and committed suicide. For now, the war in Asia with Pontus and fellow Romans was over, and a relative lull descended. Sulla didn't take this as an opportunity to relax, however, instead spending the winter of 85 to 84 relentlessly gouging the wealthy Asian territories for as much as he could. When that was finished, the victorious general went back to Athens, a city which he had so recently treated with viciousness, and immersed himself in the culture. Although stricken by a bout of illness during his stay, Sulla found time to be inducted into the famous Eleusinian Mysteries and pilfer one of the city's great libraries. Taking a short rest across the straits, the general came across 2 fishermen from Hali, a city he had previously obliterated, who gave him a gift of high-quality fish. When Sulla realized their origin, he is said to have exclaimed in shock, "What? Is any man of Hali still alive?" The fishermen feared for their safety, mistaking his surprise for anger. But Sulla smiled with light-hearted grace and said that the men were fine representatives of their city. Still, the general had a great number of Romans in his entourage who were itching to get home and get revenge on the supporters of Marius, who had torched their homes and killed their families. Their eastern adventure couldn't last forever, and a reckoning was at hand. By autumn of 84.
All right. Damn. Chariots, I'm telling you, it's completely useless. Damn, this infighting in Rome is kinda nuts, honestly. Like, damn. But yeah, I was kinda hoping for a battle between Romans, but it looks like they were also pretty useless. I mean, one commander killed, an officer killed his commander, and then the officer committed suicide. Like, oh, you idiots. I'm kind of curious. I've seen a lot of history lately, and I don't know if it's because the historians I'm watching are really, really good at storytelling, but I feel like there's so many stories in Rome I feel like could have been great TV shows, right? Like the Cimbrian War, the Jugurthine War, you know, the wars in Greece, and this war with Sulla. Like, it could be pretty great shows, honestly. So yeah, the original video will be down in the description. Otherwise, I'm heading into the next part. See you guys later. Bye.
Bare feet in the furrowed ground, dust on my tongue, heat bearing down, sun like a hammer on my back. Name I was born with, they took that. But my chains flow soft like water, running through this tired soul. You can bind my hands together, you can't cage what rivers know.